Officer orders dog to attack elderly man, but he recognizes his former owner. Sergeant Michael Johnson clenched his fist tightly as he watched the white-haired elderly man standing in front of Johnson's grocery. The complaint had come in just minutes earlier. An old man was trying to take a can of dog food without paying. It was the third call of that kind this week, and Michael was losing patience with these situations. "Ranger, position!" the officer shouted, pointing directly at the man in the beige sweater, who stood motionless near the store entrance. The German Shepherd, known as the most obedient and fierce dog in the force, took a step forward as he always did. But something unexpected happened. Ranger stopped mid-movement, his ears perked up, and his tail began to wag slightly. The dog sniffed the air, and to Michael's complete shock, ran straight toward the elderly man. "What the hell? Ranger, come back here!" Michael yelled, but it was too late. The dog had thrown himself at the man's legs, licking his face with a joy Michael had never seen before. The old man fell to his knees, hugging the animal with tears in his eyes. "Duke, my dear Duke," the man whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Michael froze. In 3 years of working with Ranger, he had never seen the dog disobey an order. And even stranger, the dog was responding to a completely different name. Mrs. Wilson, the store owner, came running out shouting, "Sergeant, this man is a thief. He was trying to leave with a can of dog food without paying. This is the 3rd time this month." But as she approached, Ranger growled low, positioning himself protectively between her and the old man. Michael tried to pull the dog back by his work leash, but he resisted fiercely, something entirely unprecedented. "Ranger, what's gotten into you?" Michael murmured, genuinely confused. A small crowd began to gather on the sidewalk. Some neighbors stepped out of their homes, others stopped on their way from work. Phones were raised to film the unusual scene. The old man stood up slowly, still stroking the dog's head, as his tail kept wagging. "I'm sorry, officer. I didn't mean to cause trouble," the man said in a weary voice. "My name is William Thompson Harris, and this is my Duke." "Your Duke?" Michael raised an eyebrow. "His name is Ranger, and he's been with the state police for 3 years. William smiled sadly, still petting the animal. "To you, he may be Ranger, but to me, he'll always be Duke. I trained him from a puppy." Michael felt a chill down his spine. There was something in the man's voice, a quiet certainty that made him question his own convictions. Ranger, or Duke, was clearly agitated, alternating between licking William's face and looking at Michael, as if torn between 2 worlds. "Sergeant, arrest this man already," Mrs. Wilson insisted. "He's always lurking around my store, full of flimsy excuses." But before Michael could respond, an elderly woman with graying hair hurried over. "Mrs. Wilson, you're being unfair to old William," the woman said breathlessly. "I'm Martha. I've lived on this street for 40 years. This man is no thief." Michael looked from one woman to the other, sensing there was much more to this story than met the eye. "What do you mean?" he asked. Martha opened a plastic bag and pulled out some yellowed aged papers. "Old William was the best dog trainer in this city. Look here," she said, showing old newspaper clippings. "William Harris revolutionizes canine training in Chicago. Former military man develops unique training techniques." Michael took the clippings with trembling hands. The photos showed a younger William in military uniform, surrounded by dozens of dogs of different breeds. In one of the pictures, a German Shepherd puppy was at his feet. This is from 15 years ago," murmured Michael, checking the dates. "Yes, it is," confirmed Martha. "Old William had the biggest dog training kennel on the West Side. State police, firefighters, families, everyone wanted dogs trained by him." William lowered his head, embarrassed by the attention. "That was a long time ago, Mrs. Martha. Now I'm just a bothersome old man." "Bothersome, my foot," the woman retorted firmly. "Tell the young man what happened, old William. Tell him the truth." Michael looked at Ranger, who remained glued to William's legs as if he never wanted to let go. Something tightened in his chest. In 3 years of partnership, he'd never seen the dog show so much affection for anyone. "Old William," Michael said softly, "can you explain what's going on here?" The elderly man took a deep breath, his hands still buried in the German Shepherd's fur. Duke was born in my kennel, Sergeant. I trained him personally from 8 weeks old. I developed special techniques with him, methods I created over decades of working with dogs. Michael felt his stomach twist. He was starting to understand why Ranger Duke responded to unique commands no other trainer could teach. And what happened? Why is he with the police? William closed his eyes for a moment, as if the question pained him physically. My wife, Catherine, got very sick, cancer. I spent everything I had on her treatments, the kennel, the house, the equipment. I sold it all. When she passed, I couldn't take care of Duke anymore. The old man's voice cracked and he had to stop speaking. Michael felt a lump in his throat. So you donated him to the police? Not exactly a donation, Martha interjected. Old William gave Duke up to make sure he'd get the best care possible. He knew a dog like that needed to work to have a purpose. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now, back to the story. Michael was starting to feel queasy. He vaguely remembered when Ranger arrived at the department's kennel. The commander had said he was a special dog, already trained, donated by a breeder who'd gone bankrupt, but they never mentioned details about who that breeder was. Sergeant, William said, raising his tear-filled eyes, I know this sounds strange, but I come to Johnson's grocery almost every day. Not to steal. I come because I wanted to save up to buy the special food Duke always ate. Special food? For working dogs. It's more expensive, but Duke always had digestive issues with other brands. I hope to save enough to buy at least one can, and ask someone to deliver it to the station for you. Mrs. Wilson scoffed dismissively. What a made-up story. Sergeant, he was walking out with the can without paying. That's not how it happened, a young voice interrupted. Everyone turned. It was Tommy, a boy of about 10 who helped at the grocery store on weekends. Tommy, go back inside, Mrs. Wilson ordered. No, Mrs. Wilson, I need to speak, the boy said bravely. Old William wasn't stealing. He picked up the can, checked the price, and when he saw he didn't have enough money, he put it back on the shelf. Then he just stood by the door looking confused. Confused? Michael asked. Yeah, sometimes he gets a little lost, you know. So I asked if he was okay, and he said he was thinking about his dog, that he missed him. Michael looked at William, who had lowered his head again. A terrible suspicion began forming in his mind. Old William, he said slowly, do you have memory problems? The old man hesitated before answering. Sometimes. After Catherine passed away, things became hazy. The doctor said it's the beginning of something, but I don't want to be a burden to anyone. Michael felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Here was a man who had dedicated his entire life to dogs, who had trained the most exceptional animal he'd ever worked with, now living in poor conditions, struggling with memory issues while trying to care from a distance for the dog he'd been forced to give up. Mrs. Wilson, Michael said, turning to the shopkeeper, are you sure he was trying to steal? Of course I am. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw it too, said a woman's voice. A woman in her 40s approached the group. She wore a nurse's uniform and carried a medical bag. Sorry for interrupting, I'm Jennifer, a nurse from the health clinic around the corner. I was coming back from lunch when I saw the commotion. Michael motioned for her to continue. I've known old William for a few months. He goes to the clinic regularly to pick up medication for high blood pressure. And I can assure you he's no thief. How can you be so sure? Jennifer smiled gently. Because last week when I was leaving the clinic, I saw him here at Johnson's grocery. A child had knocked several items off the shelves and was crying, afraid of being scolded. Old William helped the child put everything back and even bought them ice cream to stop the tears. Mrs. Wilson made an uncomfortable face. That doesn't prove anything. Yes, it does, Jennifer said firmly. It proves he has character, and more than that, at the clinic he always asks about basic veterinary care. Says it's for a dog he can't see anymore but still loves. Michael looked at Duke, who remained glued to William as if afraid of being separated again. The dog was clearly agitated but not aggressively. It was the excitement of joy, of reunion. Old William, Michael said, kneeling beside the elderly man. Can you show me something that proves you trained Duke? William smiled for the first time since the conversation began. Yes, I can, Sergeant. Duke, Alpha rest position. The German Shepherd immediately sat down, stretched his front paws forward, and rested his snout on the ground, keeping his gaze fixed on William. It was a position Michael had never seen before. Duke, Delta 7 command. The dog stood up, gave 3 short barks, 2 long ones, and sat back down. Michael's eyes widened. What was that? Emergency medical code, William explained. I taught it to him when he was a puppy. If someone was having a heart attack or seizure, he'd do that sequence to get attention and signal that urgent medical help was needed. Michael was stunned. In 3 years of working with Ranger, he'd never discovered the dog knew such specific commands. Is there more? Duke, silent perimeter. The German Shepherd stood and began walking in circles around the group, making no noise, his ears alert and upright. He was clearly patrolling, but without the military rigidity Michael was used to seeing. This is incredible, Michael murmured. He never did this with me. Because these are special commands only I use, William explained. I created my own language with him. Duke isn't just any ordinary working dog, Sergeant. He was trained to be a full companion. Mrs. Wilson was visibly growing irritated with the direction of the conversation. That's all very touching, but it doesn't change the fact that he was trying to take things without paying. I want him arrested. Michael was about to respond when a state police car pulled up in front of the grocery store. Commander Robert Anderson stepped out, looking stern. Sergeant Johnson, what's going on here? I received a call about a working dog's disobedience. Michael swallowed hard. Commander Anderson was known for his strictness and intolerance of questioning. Commander, let me explain, but I hope you can. And why is Ranger loose without his working collar? Michael looked down and realized that during the entire commotion, Duke's working collar had been removed. The dog was free, but remained voluntarily by William's side. Commander, Michael said, taking a deep breath, I've uncovered important information about Ranger's origins. What kind of information? He was trained by this gentleman here, William Harris. From what I've gathered, Old William is a former military man who developed special training techniques. Commander Anderson looked at William skeptically. So what? Many dogs are trained before joining the force. Yes, sir. But this case is different. He knows special commands we've never been able to teach Ranger. And more importantly, the dog clearly has a very strong emotional bond with him. Sergeant, I'm losing patience. What's your point? Michael hesitated. He knew what he was about to say could cost him his career, but something inside him wouldn't let him ignore the situation. Commander, I believe we've wronged this man. He's not a criminal. He's Ranger's true owner. Ranger belongs to the state police. Legally, yes, Michael admitted, but emotionally, Bago, sir, I've never seen the dog react like this. It's as if he's reunited with his family. Commander Anderson turned red with anger. Sergeant, collar that dog immediately and arrest this man for attempted theft. And you, he said, pointing at William, step away from the animal. But when Michael approached with the collar, Duke backed away and stood behind William, something he'd never done before. The dog was clearly torn between obeying his military training and protecting his true owner. Duke, it's okay, William said softly. Go with the sergeant. I understand. The old man's eyes welled up with tears again. He knew this might be his last moment with his companion, but Duke didn't move. Instead, he positioned himself even more protectively in front of William. Commander, a woman's voice interrupted. Everyone turned. A young woman in her 30s ran toward the group, her face desperate. Dad, what's happening? She threw herself into William's arms, and he seemed to calm instantly. Rachel, my girl, he murmured. Michael watched with a tightness in his chest. The young woman wore a nursing assistant's uniform and had clearly just come from work. Commander, Rachel said, still holding her father, please, let me explain the situation. Who are you? I'm Rachel Harris, William's daughter. I work 2 jobs to care for my father. A neighbor called saying he was in trouble here. Commander Anderson seemed slightly less hostile. Your father is accused of attempted theft. My father is no thief, Rachel said vehemently. He's an honest man who's dedicated his whole life to dogs. The problem is, since my mother passed, he's developed some memory issues. Memory issues? Early-stage dementia. Sometimes he gets confused about where he is or what he's doing, but he would never steal anything. Michael stepped closer to Rachel. Ma'am, did your father really train this dog? Train him? Rachel smiled through her tears. Sergeant, my father raised Duke from a puppy. He was the most special dog in the whole kennel. When Mom got sick, Dad spent all his savings on her treatment. When she passed, he couldn't keep the kennel anymore. And Duke? It broke Dad's heart to make the decision. But he knew Duke needed a purpose, needed work. So he went to the police and donated Duke, along with all the training records. Commander Anderson looked thoughtful. Training records. Yes, confirmed Rachel. Dad was always very meticulous. He must have kept copies of everything. William seemed to perk up a bit. I do. So at home I kept copies of all of Duke's progress reports, and some old videotapes too. Michael felt a pang of guilt. For 3 years he had worked with that dog without knowing his true story. He had never bothered to find out where Ranger had come from or who had trained him. Commander, Michael said, I think we should verify this information before making any hasty decisions. Sergeant, we don't have time to... Please, sir, interrupted a voice. Everyone turned to Dr. Miller, the department's veterinarian, who had arrived unnoticed. Dr. Miller? Asked the commander. What are you doing here? I got a call about Ranger's unusual behavior. I came to check if he was okay. The vet approached Duke, who greeted him calmly, but without the enthusiasm he showed toward William. Interesting, murmured Dr. Miller, examining the dog. Ranger, or Duke, is showing signs of extreme positive emotional excitement. Elevated heart rate, but not from stress or fear, or it's genuine joy. What does that mean? Asked the commander. It means this animal recognizes someone here as extremely important to him, and based on body language, I'd say it's this gentleman. Dr. Miller pointed to William. Sir, could you show me how you interact with this dog? William looked at the commander for permission. Anderson reluctantly nodded. Duke, come here, boy. The German shepherd approached immediately, but not with the military obedience Michael knew. It was a familiar, affectionate approach. Duke, show the doctor how you say hello. The dog sat on his hind legs and raised one front paw, as if waving. Now show him how you apologize. Duke rolled onto his back, all 4 paws in the air, in a position of complete submission and trust. Dr. Miller was visibly impressed. In 15 years as a vet, I've never seen a dog respond so naturally to such specific commands. This level of training and emotional connection takes years to develop. And there's more, William said timidly. Duke, code red. The German shepherd immediately stood up, ran to Michael, and began barking in a specific pattern. 3 long barks, pause, 2 short ones, pause, 3 long again. What's he doing? Asked Michael. He's alerting that you're armed, William explained. I trained him to identify armed people in emergencies. Michael nearly dropped his jaw. His gun was holstered, completely hidden under his uniform. No ordinary dog could detect that. How did he know? Gunpowder smell, metal, the holster's leather. Duke has an extraordinary sense of smell, but he can only make these identifications because he spent years training for these specific skills. Dr. Miller was scribbling notes frantically. Commander, I'll be direct. This dog has skills our training team would take decades to develop. If this man really trained him, he's an exceptional professional. But that doesn't change the fact he was accused of attempted theft, the commander insisted. Commander, said Mrs. Martha, who had been quietly observing everything, may I speak? Who are you? Martha Williams. I've lived on this street for 40 years and know everyone here. The elderly woman opened her bag again and pulled out more papers. I brought a few more things I found at home, old newspaper articles about old William. She handed the papers to the commander, who began reading with growing attention. William Harris, former Army sergeant, revolutionizes training techniques. Dogs trained by Harris assist in rescue operations. Harris method adopted by security corporations. The commander looked at William with a completely different expression. Are you Sergeant Harris, who developed the search and rescue dog protocol we still use today? William nodded timidly. That was me, yes. But that was a long time ago. My God, the commander murmured. Sir, you're a legend in our force. We studied your methods at the academy. Michael's eyes widened. Now he understood why Ranger Duke was so special. He wasn't just a well-trained dog. He was a dog trained by the best. Commander, said Dr. Miller, I think we're facing a very special situation. This man isn't just Duke's former owner. He's the creator of the techniques that make Duke the best working dog we've ever had. What about the theft accusation? Mrs. Wilson, who had stayed quiet during the revelations, seemed to shrink. Well, maybe I jumped to conclusions. What do you mean? Asked Michael. It's just, lately there have been several issues with small thefts at the grocery. When I saw you standing there with the dog food can, I thought, did you see him take the can without paying? Michael pressed. Not exactly, Mrs. Wilson admitted. I saw him pick up the can, look at the price, and then stand by the door for a while. Tommy, the boy who helps at the grocery, stepped forward again. Mrs. Wilson, can I say something? Tommy, no, let him speak, said the commander. It's just, lately Mrs. Wilson has been a bit nervous with customers, especially the older ones. She's suspicious of everyone. What are you saying? Asked Michael. Last week, she accused Mrs. Mary from the corner of trying to steal sugar, but Mrs. Mary was just looking for where it was because she couldn't find it. Mrs. Wilson turned red. That's different. And last month, Tommy continued, she said old Joseph was trying to steal soda, but he was just waiting for me to bring change from the $50 bill he gave. Michael was starting to see the pattern. Mrs. Wilson, do you often make these kinds of accusations? I have to protect my business. Protect how? There are a lot of dishonest people out there. And the elderly. Some have head problems and they get confused sometimes. Rachel stepped closer to Mrs. Wilson with a stern expression. Ma'am, my father might have memory issues sometimes, but he's not dishonest. And even when he's confused, he would never take something that isn't his. How can you be sure? Because last week I was with him when he came here to buy medicine. He was counting his money to see if he could afford a can of dog food too. When he saw he didn't have enough, he put the money away and said he'd come back another day. Michael looked at Duke, who was still glued to William, and felt a wave of sadness. Here was a man who had dedicated his entire life to serving others and training dogs, now being humiliated by a prejudiced shopkeeper. Mrs. Wilson, Michael said firmly, I think you owe Mr. William an apology. Well, if there really was a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding, said a voice behind them. Everyone turned. A well-dressed man in his 50s approached the group. Who are you? Asked the commander. My name is Richard Baker. I'm the regional manager for the grocery chain this store belongs to. Mrs. Wilson paled. Mr. Richard, I didn't know you were... I arrived a few minutes ago and have been observing the situation. And I must say I'm very disappointed, Mrs. Wilson. But I was just... You were making unfounded accusations against an elderly customer. And from what I heard, it's not the first time. Richard turned to William. Sir, on behalf of our company, I'd like to apologize for the treatment you received. This is unacceptable. No need, young man, William said kindly. Mrs. Wilson was just protecting her business. No, sir. What I witnessed was ageism, and that doesn't align with our company's values. Richard turned back to Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson, from now on, I expect you to treat every customer with the respect they deserve, especially the elderly. And today's conversation will be reported to the board. But, Mr. Richard, no buts. And to make up for the embarrassment caused to you, he said, turning to William, I'd like to offer a monthly shopping voucher so you can get everything you need, including food for... He glanced at Duke. Your dog. William was moved. That's very generous, but I can't accept charity. It's not charity, sir. It's justice. And from what I've heard here, you deserve far more respect than you've been given. Michael was impressed by how the situation had unfolded. In just minutes, William had gone from being accused of theft to being recognized as a respectable and important person. "Commander," Dr. Miller said, "may I make a suggestion?" "Of course. What if we invited Mr. William to visit our facility? I'm sure he could teach us a lot about Rangers, Duke's, special abilities." Commander Anderson seemed to consider the idea. "Mr. Harris, would you be willing to share some of your knowledge with us?" William looked at Duke, who was lying at his feet, completely relaxed for the first time in years. "It would be an honor, Commander, but would Duke be okay with me visiting?" "Sir," Michael said, kneeling beside the elderly man, "I think Duke would be more than okay. I think he'd be the happiest dog in the world." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Commander Anderson was clearly moved. "Mr. Harris, I'd like to make an official proposal. How about we bring you on as a volunteer consultant for our K9 unit? You could work with Duke and help us train other dogs." William's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. Your knowledge is too valuable to waste. And clearly Duke, Ranger, would benefit greatly from your regular presence." Rachel stepped closer to her father, tears in her eyes. "Dad, this would be wonderful. You'd get to do what you love again." "But I don't know if I'm still capable," William hesitated. "My memory sometimes—" "Sir," Dr. Miller interrupted, "I've worked with many experts over the years. What I saw today proves your skills with dogs remain intact. Memory may falter in some areas, but your connection with animals is natural and deep." Michael stood and extended his hand to William. "Mr. William, it would be an honor to work with you, and I'm sure Duke would be thrilled." The German Shepherd seemed to understand the conversation and began wagging his tail vigorously. "I think that's Duke's answer," William laughed, shaking Michael's hand. "Then it's settled," the commander said. "Mr. Harris, you're officially invited to join our team as a consultant. We'll start on Monday." "Commander," Rachel said, "my father would need transportation. I work 2 jobs and can't drive him every day." "That's not a problem," Michael replied. "I can pick him up every morning. It would be my pleasure." "And about the fuel and time expenses," added the commander, "we'll arrange for an appropriate allowance." William was clearly too emotional to speak. Duke stood up and rested his head on the elderly man's lap, as if understanding something wonderful was happening. "There's one more thing," said Richard, the grocery manager. "Mr. Harris, I'd like to sponsor the special food for Duke. Our store has a social responsibility program, and it would be a pleasure to include care for working dogs." "You're all being too generous," murmured William. "No, sir," said Martha. "They're being fair. You deserve all the recognition for everything you've done, and still can do." Michael looked around and saw how the situation had completely transformed. Just an hour earlier, he'd been ready to arrest an elderly man for theft. Now he was witnessing the acknowledgement of a forgotten hero. "Old William," said Michael, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, Sergeant. Why didn't you ever reach out to us before? To see Duke, to introduce yourself as his former trainer?" William took a deep breath. "I tried a few times. I called the station, sent letters asking to visit Duke. But they always told me it wasn't possible, that working dogs couldn't have contact with outsiders." Michael felt a heavy weight in his chest. Do you still have those letters?" "I do. I kept all the rejections." "Sir, forgive me. If I had known—" "Don't blame yourself, Sergeant. You were following protocol, I understand." But Michael couldn't easily forgive himself. How many times had he seen Ranger Duke looking melancholy, and now he understood why. The dog had missed his true companion. "Commander," Michael said, "may I suggest we review our protocols about contact between working dogs and their former handlers?" "Good idea, Sergeant. Clearly, our current policy needs to be more flexible in special cases like this." Dr. Miller approached Duke and did a quick assessment. It's remarkable how his behavior has changed in the last few minutes. His muscle tension has eased, his breathing is calmer, and he's showing clear signs of emotional well-being. "What does that mean in practice?" asked the commander. "It means Mr. Williams' presence has a therapeutic effect on the animal. not just emotionally but physically too. A less stressed dog is a more efficient worker. So it would benefit the service if Mr. William worked regularly with Duke. Absolutely. In fact, I'd say it's essential. William looked around, still processing how his life had changed so drastically in just minutes. I don't know how to thank all of you. Sir, said Jennifer, the nurse, if anything, we should be thanking you. People like you make our community better. And now, added Martha, you'll be able to do what you've always loved, working with dogs. Rachel hugged her father again. Daddy, I'm so happy. It's been so long since I've seen you truly smile. It's just, said William, stroking Duke. I never thought I'd see my boy again, let alone work with him once more. Michael watched the interaction between the man and the dog, and an idea came to him. Old William, can I ask one more question? Of course. These past 3 years working with Duke, Ranger, I always thought he was exceptional, but I had the feeling he was holding back part of his potential, like there were skills he knew but didn't show. William smiled. That's very perceptive of you, Sergeant. Duke has several skills he only shows when he feels completely comfortable and confident. What kind of skills? For example, Duke, Omega Command. The German Shepherd stood up and began systematically sniffing the air. After a few seconds, he went straight to a lady who was watching the situation from a distance. What is he doing? Asked Michael. Detecting health problems. That lady over there probably has diabetes or high blood pressure. Everyone looked surprised at the woman, who hesitantly stepped forward. How did he know? She asked. I've had diabetes for 15 years. Duke can detect chemical changes in the human body through scent, explained William. I trained him to identify various medical conditions. Dr. Miller was fascinated. This could be extremely useful in rescue operations. Exactly. Duke can find buried people not just by regular scent, but by detecting signs of metabolic stress, dehydration, infections. It's much more precise. Michael was starting to understand the true extent of what they had lost over the past 3 years. Commander, I think I need to officially apologize. All this time, I completely underutilized Duke's abilities. Sergeant, you didn't know, none of us did. What matters is we can fix that now. And there's more, William continued. Duke can be trained to work with traumatized children, elderly with dementia, people with depression. He has exceptional emotional sensitivity. Rachel smiled proudly at her father. Dad always said Duke wasn't just a working dog, he was a therapy dog. This opens incredible possibilities, said the commander. We could expand our community services. Commander, Michael said, may I suggest we organize an official demonstration of Duke's abilities with old William, so the whole department can learn? Excellent idea. Mr. Harris, would you be willing to give a presentation to our men? William looked at Duke, who was clearly more excited than Michael had ever seen him. It would be an honor, and I'm sure Duke would love to show what he can do. Mrs. Wilson, who had stayed quiet during the whole conversation, timidly approached William. Sir, I'd like to apologize. I acted hastily, and it was unfair to you. William smiled kindly. It's all right, Mrs. Wilson. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them. You're very generous, and if you'd like, you can bring Duke here to the grocery store anytime you need something. He'll always be welcome. Thank you. I think Duke would like to visit the neighborhood where he grew up from time to time. Richard, the manager, approached again. Mr. Harris, I'd like to make another suggestion. How about we organize an event at the grocery store, a demonstration of Duke's skills for the community? It would be educational and help people better understand the police's work. That would be wonderful, said Martha. The folks in the neighborhood would love to hear old William and Duke's story. Michael was impressed by how the situation had turned into something positive for the whole community. Commander, I think this would be a great opportunity to improve our relationship with the public. I agree. Mr. Harris, would you be willing? Of course. And it would be a good chance for Duke to readjust to the environment where he grew up. Duke, as if understanding the conversation, began sniffing the air and exploring the area around the grocery store. He was clearly recognizing familiar scents. Look, said Tommy, the grocery store boy. "He remembers the place." "Probably," William confirmed. "A dog's scent memory is much stronger than ours. For him, being here must be like flipping through a photo album." Dr. Miller took a few more notes. "Mr. Harris, I'd like to document this readjustment process. It would be valuable for our behavioral studies. Of course, anything that can help other dogs." Michael checked his watch and realized several hours had passed since the incident began. "Commander, do I need to file a report on this situation?" "Yes, but it will be a very different report from what we initially imagined," laughed the commander. "Instead of an arrest for theft, it will be a report about the discovery of exceptional talent and the establishment of a new community partnership." "And I," said Michael, looking at William, "would like to learn everything I can about your techniques. I want to be a better partner for Duke." "It will be my pleasure to teach you, Sergeant, and I'm sure Duke appreciates the love he's received all these years." Duke moved closer to Michael and for the first time showed genuine affection by licking his hand. "I think he's saying thank you," laughed William. "Or maybe he's saying he forgives my ignorance," replied Michael, emotional. Rachel looked at her father and saw a transformation she hadn't witnessed in years. William stood taller, his eyes shining in a way she hadn't seen since before her mother's passing. "Daddy," she whispered, "you look like your old self." "It's just..." William took a deep breath. "For the first time in years, I feel like I have a purpose again. And more importantly, I have my Duke back." "Actually," said the commander, "we all won today. The department gained an exceptional consultant, Duke got his companion back, and the community gained an example of how seemingly negative situations can turn into something positive. And I learned an important lesson," added Michael, "that sometimes we need to look beyond appearances to understand the truth." Jennifer, the nurse, approached Rachel. "Forgive the intrusion, but I wanted to say how much I admire what you've done for your father. Working 2 jobs to care for him shows real strength of character." "He's done so much for me my whole life," Rachel replied. "It was the least I could do for him." "And now," said Richard, "with the consulting work and the stipend, you won't have to work so hard anymore. You'll have more time with your father." Rachel began to cry with relief. "You don't know what this means to me. I was so worried about his future." "His future is secure," the commander said firmly, "and it will be a productive and happy one." Duke, sensing the emotion in the air, moved closer to Rachel and rested his head in her hand, offering comfort. "He's amazing," she murmured, "as if he understands everything happening." "He does," William confirmed. "Duke has always been very sensitive to human emotions. It's part of what makes him special." Dr. Miller closed his notepad. "Mr. Harris, I'd like to schedule our first technical meeting for tomorrow morning. I'm eager to learn about your methods. And I'd like to review Duke's records from the last 3 years," said William, "to understand his development and plan the next steps." "It will be my pleasure to share everything," Michael assured. Martha gathered her papers and prepared to leave. "Old William, I'm so happy everything worked out. You deserve this joy." "Thank you, Mrs. Martha, and thank you for keeping all those clippings. They were crucial today." "I kept them because I knew they'd be important someday. A man like you shouldn't be forgotten." Tommy shyly approached Duke. "Can I pet him?" "Of course," said William. "Duke, say hello to Tommy." The German shepherd sat and offered his paw to the boy, who laughed in delight. "He's so smart." "And you were very brave today," Michael told the boy. "Your honesty helped clear up the situation." Tommy blushed with pride. Mrs. Wilson approached again. "Mr. Harris, I'd like to make a suggestion. What if we set aside a weekly time here at Johnson's Grocery for Duke to visit the neighborhood? I think it would be good for him and the community." "That's a wonderful idea," William replied. "Duke always loved interacting with people." "And it would be educational for the children," added Richard. "We could create an animal care education program." "Even better," said the commander. "We're building a real network of community benefits." Michael looked around, amazed at how many people had spontaneously gotten involved in the situation. It was as if everyone had been touched by William and Duke's story. "Old William," he said, "may I ask about your wife? Are you comfortable talking about her?" William smiled sadly. Catherine was a nurse. She met Duke when he was a puppy and fell in love with him just as much as I did. She always said Duke wasn't just my work partner, but a member of the family. She must be happy seeing you two together again, Jennifer said gently. I believe so. Catherine always said true love is never completely lost. It just waits for the right moment to reunite. Duke moved closer to William and lay at his feet, as if wanting to stay by his companion's side forever. And now, Rachel said, Dad has a new chance to be happy. Not just to be happy, the commander corrected, but also to keep making a difference in others' lives. Your knowledge can help so many dogs and people. William looked at Duke, then at everyone around him, and felt overwhelming gratitude. When I woke up this morning, I thought it would just be another hard day. I never imagined I'd end up reuniting with Duke and gaining a new family. A new family? Michael asked. Yes, all of you from the force, the folks from Johnson's Grocery, the neighbors. Everyone showed a kindness I never expected to find. Mr. Harris, Richard said, the kindness you received today is just a reflection of the kindness you've spread your whole life. You reap what you sow. Dr. Miller looked at Duke, who was completely relaxed for the first time Michael could remember. His transformation is remarkable. Medically speaking, I'd say the animal's stress levels dropped drastically just from being near old William. Does that mean he was suffering? Michael asked, concerned. Not in a clinical sense, Dr. Miller explained, but he clearly missed something fundamental. Now we know what it was. And I felt it too, Michael admitted. I always sensed there was a barrier between us. Now I understand why. Sergeant, William said, that barrier wasn't your fault. Duke was torn between two loyalties, the trained bond he developed with you and the emotional bond he always had with me. Now he can have both. How so? You'll always be his work partner, and he'll respect that. But I'll be, let's say, his emotional confidant. Two different but complementary roles. Michael thought the explanation was perfect. Does that mean I can learn from you how to build a deeper connection with him? Of course, I'll teach you everything I can. The commander checked his watch. Everyone, I think we've taken enough of your time. Mr. Harris, let's confirm. Monday at 8 in the morning, Sergeant Michael will pick you up so we can start our work together. Confirmed, Commander. And thank you for everything. We're the ones who should thank you. And Duke, he said, turning to the dog, welcome back to the family. Duke wagged his tail and barked once as if answering. I think he said thank you, Rachel laughed. I'm sure he did, William agreed, hugging the dog once more. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the days that followed, William's life changed completely. Michael arrived promptly at 8 in the morning to pick him up, and the two headed to the State Police Training Center. Duke always showed contagious joy when he saw William arriving. On the first day of work, William was impressed by the modern facilities of the kennel. Wow, how everything has evolved, he remarked, observing the state-of-the-art equipment. And it will evolve even more with your knowledge, replied Dr. Miller, who had been eagerly waiting to learn. During the first week, William demonstrated techniques that left the entire team in awe. Duke revealed skills he had kept hidden during 3 years of work with the Force. Duke, complete Delta sequence, commanded William during one of the demonstrations. The German Shepherd executed a series of complex movements, silent tracking, chemical detection, medical alert, and defensive tactical positioning. All in perfect sync. Incredible, murmured the commander, who had watched the demonstration alongside other officers. In 3 years, we've never seen anything like it. It's because Duke was saving these skills for when he felt completely safe and confident, explained William. Michael watched in fascination as the partnership between him and Duke improved day by day. With William guiding him, he learned to communicate with the dog in ways he had never imagined. Sergeant, William said during one of the training sessions, try not to give commands like military orders. Treat them like conversations. Duke responds better to cooperation than domination. Michael followed the advice and immediately noticed the difference. Duke began showing a willingness and enthusiasm that completely transformed his work efficiency. After 2 weeks, the day of the public demonstration at Johnson's grocery arrived. The entire community came to see Duke's performance and learn more about William's story. "Everyone," the commander said to the gathered crowd, "today you'll witness one of the most beautiful stories of reunion and recognition I've ever seen." William was a little nervous at first, but Duke stayed by his side, offering reassurance. "Duke and I worked together for many years," William began. "We developed our own language based on mutual trust and respect. He demonstrated some of the special commands he had taught the dog." The audience was amazed when Duke identified a person with heart problems in the crowd. "How did he do that?" asked an elderly woman. "Duke was trained to detect chemical changes in the human body," William explained. "He can identify various medical conditions through scent. The demonstration was an absolute success. By the end, many people approached to ask questions and get to know Duke better. A shy teenager hesitantly stepped forward. "Sir, my grandfather has Alzheimer's. Could a dog like Duke help him?" William smiled kindly. "Yes, sweetheart. Trained dogs can be very beneficial for people with memory issues. They offer companionship, routine, and can even alert when someone is disoriented." "Would it be possible to train a dog for that?" "Of course, in fact," William said, glancing at the commander, "it would be great to create a community program for training therapy dogs." "Excellent idea," the commander agreed. "We could expand our community services." Richard, the grocery manager, approached. "Mr. Harris, I'd like to propose making this demonstration a monthly event. The community's response has been fantastic." "That would be wonderful," William agreed. "And we could include education on basic pet care, responsible ownership, things like that. And I could organize talks on first aid," offered Jennifer. Michael watched as a simple police incident had turned into a network of community benefits. It was remarkable how good could multiply when people came together with good intentions. In the following months, William's life flourished in ways he had never imagined. His work as a consultant not only gave him purpose again, but also provided financial stability, allowing Rachel to reduce her workload. "Dad," she said one morning, "you look 10 years younger." "That's because I feel 10 years younger," William laughed. "Working with Duke again brought back a part of me I thought I'd lost." Dr. Miller meticulously documented the improvement in William's mental health. His episodes of confusion decreased dramatically, and his energy levels rose significantly. "It's incredible the therapeutic effect Duke has on him," the vet remarked to Michael, "and vice versa. They strengthen each other." The therapy dog program William developed became a model for the entire region. Dogs trained by him began working in nursing homes, hospitals, and rehabilitation centers. "Old William," the director of a geriatric center, said during a visit, "I can't express how much our residents have improved with the presence of the dogs you trained." "Dogs have a natural gift for healing wounded hearts," William replied. "I just helped them develop it." William's technique was based on something he called empathic training. Instead of conditioning dogs solely through commands and rewards, he taught them to understand and respond to human emotional needs. "The difference," he explained to a group of visiting veterinarians, "is that we don't train dogs to blindly obey. We train them to think, feel, and decide how best to help." Duke became the perfect example of this philosophy. In police work, he maintained all his efficiency and discipline, but also displayed an emotional sensitivity that made him exceptional in delicate situations. During a search operation for a missing child, Duke not only found the girl but stayed by her side, offering comfort until rescuers arrived. The incident was widely reported and brought national recognition to William's work. "Mr. Harris," a reporter asked during an interview, "what's the secret to your method?" "There's no secret," William replied simply. "It's just love. When you truly love an animal and they feel it, they give their best in return." William's growing fame brought unexpected opportunities. Universities began inviting him to lecture, other states requested his consulting services, and publishers expressed interest in a book about his methods. "Dad," Rachel said one day, "a publisher in Chicago wants to publish your story. What do you think?" William reflected for a moment. "If it can help other dogs and people, why not?" The book, Duke and Me, A Journey of Love and Rediscovery, became a bestseller and all proceeds went to programs for adopting and training abandoned dogs. Michael, who had grown very close to William during their months of working together, was deeply moved by the experience. "Old William," he said one day, "you've changed my life." "How so, Sergeant?" "I've learned that being a police officer isn't just about enforcing the law. It's about understanding people, their stories, their needs. You've taught me to have compassion without losing authority." "And you've taught me it's never too late to start over," William replied. "When I thought my usefulness was over, you showed me I still had so much to give." Duke, lying between them, seemed to smile as if he understood the conversation. The relationship between Michael and Duke had also transformed completely. They developed a partnership that went beyond the professional, built on mutual respect and deep understanding. "It's amazing how he's changed," commented the commander during an evaluation meeting. "Duke was always efficient, but now he's exceptional. And more importantly, he's visibly happy." Duke's happiness was contagious. The other dogs in the kennel seemed more lively and cooperative when he was around, as if his positive energy spread to them. Dr. Miller conducted a detailed study on the phenomenon. "What we've observed is that Duke's emotional stability is positively influencing the entire kennel environment. It's a domino effect of well-being." The community program of monthly demonstrations at Johnson's Grocery had become a highly anticipated event in the area. Families came from far away to watch and learn about animal care. Mrs. Wilson, who had become one of William's biggest supporters, organized the events enthusiastically. "Old William," she said one day, "I never imagined my grocery store would turn into an animal education center." "Life is full of surprises," William replied. "The important thing is that we stay open to them." During one of these events, a special situation occurred. A family brought in a teenage dog that was showing aggressive behavior. "We don't know what else to do," said the owner, clearly desperate. "The vet said it might be better to—" She couldn't finish the sentence. William approached the troubled dog with Duke by his side. To everyone's surprise, the aggressive animal immediately calmed down in Duke's presence. "I can try to help," William said gently. Within minutes, he identified that the dog wasn't naturally aggressive, but was reacting to chronic pain caused by a hip deformity. "Take him to the vet to check his right hip," he advised. "Then come back so we can talk about behavioral training." 3 weeks later, the family returned with a completely transformed dog. The surgery had fixed the physical issue, and William's guidance had resolved the behavioral problems. "Mr. Harris," the owner said emotionally, "you saved our buddy's life." "I didn't save him," William corrected. "I just helped him communicate better with you." Stories like this became common. William didn't just train dogs, he educated entire families on how to build healthy relationships with their pets. Rachel watched her father with growing pride. "Mom would be so happy seeing you like this," she said during a Sunday lunch. "I believe she is watching," William replied, looking at Duke sleeping at his feet. "And I'm sure she's smiling." The transformation in William's life also had a direct impact on the community. The neighborhood became more united, with neighbors helping each other and showing more care for local animals. Martha, who had been crucial on the day of the reunion, became something of the neighborhood's unofficial historian. "Old William," she said one day, "you've brought hope to so many people here. You've proven it's never too late for a second chance." "Everyone deserves a second chance, Mrs. Martha. Sometimes we just need someone to believe in us." Richard turned the grocery store into a support center for animal causes. A portion of sales went to animal protection NGOs, and the store became a collection point for food for abandoned dogs. "Mr. Harris," Richard said, "your story inspired us to be a more socially conscious business." The impact of William's work spread beyond the local community. Other states began adopting his techniques, and a canine training institute was established in his honor. "Professor Harris," the institute's director said during the inauguration, "it's an honor to preserve your teachings." William, now formally recognized as a professor, was deeply moved by the tribute. "I hope this institute trains not just dog handlers, but people who understand our work is about love, respect, and communication." Duke, always present at important events, seemed to sense the solemnity of the moment and carried himself with special dignity. Michael, who had been promoted to lieutenant due to his successful operations with Duke, became one of the main advocates for William's methods within the force. "Commander," he said during a command meeting, "I suggest we make Professor Harris's techniques mandatory in our basic training." "I completely agree," replied the commander, who had also been promoted due to the K9 unit's outstanding results. "Let's implement this statewide." The methodology developed by William began to be studied in universities. Animal behavior researchers came from various countries to observe his work. "Professor Harris," said a German researcher, "in Europe, we're very interested in your techniques. Would you consider coming to give some demonstrations?" "I appreciate the invitation," William replied, "but my place is here with Duke and my community. You're welcome to send people to learn here." William's response showed his humility and attachment to his roots. Despite all the recognition, he remained the same simple man who loved dogs and valued human relationships. Dr. Miller documented everything meticulously and published several scientific papers on William's work. "Professor," the veterinarian said, "your methods are revolutionizing our understanding of canine emotional intelligence." "I'm not revolutionizing anything," William laughed. "I'm just listening to what dogs have always tried to tell us." Fame brought tempting offers from big companies, but William always refused those that didn't align with his values. "Dad," Rachel said, "this company offered a lot of money to use your image." "Money doesn't buy happiness, my dear. I'd rather keep doing what I love with the people I love." Duke, now approaching 9 years old, still showed the vitality and joy of a younger dog. Dr. Miller attributed this to the quality of emotional life he enjoyed. "It's amazing how youthful he remains," the vet remarked. "Happiness really is the best medicine." The monthly events at the grocery store became true community celebrations. Children came especially to play with Duke, who showed endless patience with the little ones. "Uncle William," a 5-year-old girl asked, "is Duke magic?" "No, sweetheart," William replied warmly. "Duke is special because he has so much love in his heart, and love isn't magic. It's something we can all have." The child smiled and hugged Duke, who responded with a gentle lick. Tommy, now 15, had become a sort of unofficial assistant to William during the events. "Professor Harris," the teenager said, "I want to study veterinary medicine. You inspired me." "That's wonderful, Tommy. The world needs more people who love animals. Could you write me a letter of recommendation? It would be my honor." William's influence extended beyond dogs. His life philosophy, based on respect, patience, and love, touched everyone around him. Jennifer, the nurse, implemented some of William's empathic communication techniques in her work with patients. "Professor Harris," she said, "your lessons on patience and active listening have greatly improved my healthcare work." "I'm glad to hear that. Caring for lives, whether human or animal, requires the same basic qualities." The relationship between William and Michael grew into a deep friendship. They began having lunch together regularly, sharing stories and experiences. "Old William," Michael said one day, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Do you miss your wife?" William smiled sadly. "Every day. But Catherine taught me that true love doesn't end with physical departure. It transforms and continues to inspire us. When I work with Duke, I feel she's with me, approving." Michael was moved by the answer. "You're a very wise man." "I'm not wise. I've just learned that life is more beautiful when we share love." Duke, who was lying at William's feet, raised his head as if confirming his companion's words. The institute, created in William's honor, graduated its first class of trainers. The graduation ceremony was an emotional event, attended by officials and media. "Professor Harris," said one graduate, "how can we bring your teachings to other regions?" "Always remember, technique without love is just training. Love without technique is just sentimentality. The balance between the two is what makes the difference." The audience gave a standing ovation, and Duke wagged his tail enthusiastically, as if proud of his companion. Rachel, who had returned to school thanks to the financial stability provided by her father's work, graduated with a business degree and began helping manage William's projects. "Dad," she said, "I never imagined our lives would change so much after that day at the grocery store." "Life has those surprises," William replied. "What matters is being open to receiving them." During one of their routine visits to Dr. Miller, the veterinarian made an interesting discovery. Professor Harris, Duke is showing signs of exceptional longevity for a German Shepherd. Biologically, he seems younger than he really is. Happiness rejuvenates, William smiled. Duke is living his best life. And so are you, added Dr. Miller. Your tests show impressive mental and physical health for someone your age. The partnership between William and Duke continued to evolve. They developed new communication codes that even impressed experienced specialists. It's like they read each other's minds, remarked a visiting trainer. It's not telepathy, William explained. It's absolute trust. When two beings know each other deeply, communication goes beyond words and commands. The therapy dog program expanded to include work with traumatized war veterans. Duke became especially skilled at detecting and comforting people with post-traumatic stress. It's amazing how he knows exactly what to do, said a military psychologist. He seems to have a supernatural intuition for human suffering. It's not supernatural, William corrected. It's pure empathy. Duke genuinely cares about people. Michael, now a captain, implemented William's techniques throughout the state police. The results were so positive that other states began requesting training. Professor Harris, Michael said, your influence is spreading across the country. That's good. The more people understand that kindness and firmness can coexist, the better our world will be. During an interview for a documentary about his work, William was asked about his future plans. Professor Harris, what are your goals for the coming years? To keep learning, he answered simply. Duke still teaches me new things every day. As long as he's by my side, I'll keep growing. Duke, who had been lying beside William's chair during the interview, opened his eyes and looked straight at the camera as if wanting to join the conversation. And it seems Duke has something to add, the interviewer laughed. He always does, William confirmed, tenderly stroking the dog's head. The story of William and Duke inspired the creation of a state law guaranteeing special rights for retired working animals and their original trainers. Professor Harris, said the congressman who authored the law, your story has shown the importance of valuing these special bonds. Thank you. I hope this helps other animals and people maintain their important connections. The official recognition came in the form of an honorary medal awarded by the governor. Professor William Harris, said the governor during the ceremony, your dedication to animals and the community is an example to us all. William received the medal humbly, but what moved him most was seeing Duke receiving a special medal as State Honorary Dog. Now we're officially decorated partners, he whispered to Duke, who wagged his tail proudly. The ceremony was broadcast on television, and thousands of people sent messages of affection and admiration. Dad, said Rachel, reading the messages, look how many lives you've touched. It's rewarding to know our story can inspire others, William replied. Dr. Miller announced he would write a technical book about William's methods with international scientific approval. Professor Harris, I'd like you to be the co-author. Your practical knowledge is essential. It will be an honor to contribute to science. The book Canine Empathic Communication, The Harris Methods, became a global reference in animal training. Richard decided to franchise the concept of pet-friendly markets, inspired by the success of his store. Professor Harris, I'd like you to be the consultant for the chain. Your philosophy of respect for animals would be our trademark. I accept, as long as the values are always preserved. The Harris-Richard market chain spread across the country, always maintaining community events and support for animal causes. Martha, now over 70, continued documenting the neighborhood's history and took pride in witnessing William's transformation. Old William, she said, when I saved those old newspaper clippings, I never imagined they'd be so important. You were an angel in our lives, Mrs. Martha. Your kindness changed everything. No, dear, your story is what changed everything. I just helped tell it. Tommy, now a college student studying veterinary medicine, became the official intern at Williams Institute. Professor, the young man said, I want to specialize in animal therapy. Could you mentor me? Of course, Tommy. You have a natural gift for it. How do you know? Because since you were a boy, you've shown compassion and honesty. Those are the most important qualities for working with animals. Jennifer opened a clinic specializing in integrative medicine, including animal-assisted therapy using dogs trained by William's methods. Professor Harris, she said, our patients are seeing extraordinary results. Depression, anxiety, trauma. The dogs help where medicine sometimes fails. Animals heal because they love unconditionally. It's the most powerful medicine there is. During a routine visit to the training center, William noticed Duke was a little slower than usual. "Dr. Miller," he said, concerned. "Is Duke okay?" After detailed exams, the vet smiled. "He's doing great for a nearly 10-year-old dog. Just some natural signs of maturity. Nothing to worry about." "Do we still have plenty of time together?" "Many years, Professor. Duke has excellent quality of life." William was relieved. The thought of being separated from Duke again was unthinkable. Michael, now a major, received an offer to command the National Canine Unit. "Professor Harris," he said, "I'll only accept if you agree to be the national consultant too. That's a big responsibility, one you deserve and are perfectly qualified for." William accepted the position, and his influence spread nationwide. During his inauguration as national consultant, William gave a speech that moved the entire audience. "A few years ago, I was just a confused old man in front of a grocery store. Today, I'm here because good people decided to look beyond appearances and see my truth. My mission now is to ensure others aren't judged by their circumstances, but by their potential." The audience rose in applause, and Duke, beside William on stage, wagged his tail as if he understood the importance of the moment. Rachel, who had married and given William 2 grandchildren, watched her father with immense pride. "Dad," she said after the ceremony, "Mom would be so proud." "She is proud," William corrected, "and Duke is proof of that. He brought back not just my joy, but my purpose." William's grandchildren, John and Mary, grew up considering Duke their canine grandfather. The German Shepherd showed endless patience with the children and became their dedicated protector. "Grandpa," said 5-year-old John, "will Duke live forever?" William hugged his grandson tenderly. "Duke will live forever in our hearts, John, and while we're together, we'll cherish every moment." "He's magical, right, Grandpa?" "Yes, my boy. Duke is pure magic. The magic of true love." William and Duke's story was adapted into a film that moved millions worldwide. During the premiere, William was asked what he had learned from the experience. "I learned that we should never underestimate the power of a second chance. I learned that love has no expiration date, and I learned that sometimes we need to lose ourselves to truly find ourselves." "And Duke, what did he teach you?" William looked at Duke, who stood beside him on the red carpet, wearing a special bow tie for the occasion. "Duke taught me that loyalty isn't just obedience. It's choosing to stand by those we love, even when circumstances change. He taught me that true love waits, forgives, and celebrates reunion." The film earned millions at the box office, and all proceeds went to animal protection projects and programs for vulnerable seniors. "Professor Harris," the director said, "would you like to make a sequel?" "Only if it continues spreading messages of love and respect." The sequel was produced and became even more popular than the first film. During a special interview marking 5 years since their reunion, William and Duke were invited back to the grocery store where it all began. "How does it feel to return here?" the reporter asked. "It's emotional," William replied. "This place changed our lives forever." Duke sniffed the air and walked to the exact spot where he had recognized William 5 years earlier. He sat there, looking at his owner with a serene expression. "It's like he's saying thank you," the reporter observed. "No," William said, moved. "He's saying he'd choose it all again, and so would I." Mrs. Wilson, now one of William's biggest supporters, approached the group. "Professor Harris," she said, "can I confess something?" "Of course." "That day when I accused you, I was going through a very hard time. I'd recently lost my husband and was afraid of everything and everyone. Your kindness afterward taught me so much about forgiveness and compassion. We all go through tough times, Mrs. Wilson. What matters is that we learn and grow. You taught me it's possible to start over at any age." Richard approached with a special cake to celebrate the reunion's anniversary. "Professor Harris," he said, "this grocery store has become a symbol of hope for the whole community. Thank you for turning a misunderstanding into something so beautiful. The celebration lasted all afternoon, with the whole community joining in. Children played with Duke, seniors shared stories, and everyone celebrated how love can transform lives. "Grandpa," said Mary, William's granddaughter, "you're famous." "No, sweetheart," replied William, hugging the little girl. "Duke and I are just lucky to have found good people along our way." "And will you stay together forever?" "Forever and one day more," William promised, looking at Duke, who slept peacefully in the afternoon sun. Michael, now a general, watched the scene with deep satisfaction. "Professor Harris," he said, "I can say that day changed not just your life, but mine too. I learned to be a better officer, and more importantly, a better person. And I learned it's never too late to make new friends and build new families." Dr. Miller approached with Duke's latest test results. "Professor," he said, smiling, "I have good news. Duke is in perfect health and could have many years ahead." "What a relief," William exclaimed. "We still have so much work to do together. And so many lives to touch," added Rachel, hugging her father. Martha, now considered the unofficial matriarch of the neighborhood, watched everything with tears of joy. "Old William," she said, "when I saved those newspaper clippings, I knew they'd be important someday. But I never imagined they'd bring so much happiness. You planted a seed of hope, Mrs. Martha, and look how it bloomed." Tommy, now a licensed veterinarian working at Williams Institute, approached with a special certificate. "Professor," he said, "on behalf of all the students at the Institute, I'd like to present you with this Mentor of the Year award." "Thank you, Tommy. But you all know the real mentor here is Duke. I just translate what he teaches." Hearing his name, Duke opened his eyes and lazily wagged his tail, as if agreeing with William's modesty. Jennifer approached with impressive data about the therapy dog program. "Professor Harris," she said, "our dogs trained by your methods have already helped over 10,000 people across the country. The improvement rate in patients with depression has increased by 300%. "It's the power of unconditional love," William replied. "Dogs don't judge, don't criticize. They just love, and that's exactly what wounded people need." As the day drew to a close, William reflected on the extraordinary journey he had lived. From a lost and forgotten man, he had become a symbol of hope and renewal. "Duke," he said, stroking the dog, "who would have thought that difficult day would turn into our greatest blessing?" Duke moved closer and rested his head on William's lap, as he always did when he wanted to show affection and understanding. "You know," William said to everyone around him, "if I could go back in time, I wouldn't change a thing. Every hardship, every tear, every moment of despair was necessary to bring us here." "Why, Professor?" a child asked. "Because sometimes we need to get lost to discover who we really are. And we need to face the darkness to truly appreciate the light when it comes." Michael walked up to William to say goodbye. "Professor," he said, "thank you for teaching me that true strength isn't about power, it's about compassion. And thank you for having the courage to question your first impressions and seek the truth." Dr. Miller packed his equipment and prepared to leave. "Professor Harris," he said, "it's been a pleasure documenting this story. Duke remains a fascinating mystery of nature." "He's no mystery," William smiled, "just love in its purest form." Richard closed the grocery store with a sense of fulfillment. "Professor Harris," he said, "thank you for turning our little shop into a place of hope. Thank you for seeing beyond profit and embracing a greater cause." Rachel helped her father up from the chair where he'd spent the afternoon. "Dad," she said, "ready to go home?" "Ready," William replied. "But first," he turned to Duke, who was watching everything attentively. "Duke, Alpha Omega Final Command." The German shepherd stood up, walked to the center of the group, and sat down majestically. Then he bowed his head, as if paying respect to everyone present. "What was that?" someone asked. "That was Duke's way of saying thank you to all of you," William explained, moved. "It's a special command I created for unique occasions." Everyone applauded, touched by the dog's symbolic gesture. When they finally arrived home, William sat in his favorite armchair, with Duke lying at his feet. "You knew, didn't you, Duke?" he said, stroking the dog. You knew that day at the grocery store would change everything. Duke looked at William with those intelligent eyes that always seemed to hold secrets. You always knew we'd find each other again. The faith you had gave me the strength to keep going. The German Shepherd stood up and placed his front paws on William's lap, a position he rarely took. I love you too, my friend, William whispered. Thank you for never giving up on me. Rachel watched the scene from the kitchen, tears in her eyes. John, Mary, she called the children. Come see how Grandpa and Duke love each other. The children approached and joined the hug, creating a moment of perfect family harmony. Grandpa, John said, are you going to tell Duke our story? What story, my boy? The story of how you got lost and found each other again. Duke likes stories, doesn't he? William smiled and began to narrate, as if Duke could understand every word. Once upon a time, there was a man and his best friend who had to part ways. The man was very sad and lost. The dog went on to live a new life but never forgot his first love. And then one magical day, they found each other again and discovered that true love never dies. It just waits for the right moment to shine once more. Duke wagged his tail gently, as if approving the version of the story. And they lived happily ever after? Mary asked. They are living happily ever after, William corrected, because our love story has no end. That night, as Duke slept peacefully beside William's bed, the old trainer reflected on all the extraordinary events that had transformed his life. From a forgotten and confused man, he had become a symbol of hope. From an efficient working dog, Duke had become an ambassador of unconditional love. But more important than all the fame and recognition was the simple, powerful fact: they were together again. Thank you, William whispered to the universe before closing his eyes. Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late for a second chance, and that true love always finds its way back home. Duke opened one eye, as if he had heard his companion's gratitude, and his tail wagged once, softly, before he returned to peaceful sleep. And so, in a small house in Chicago, a man and his dog slept soundly, knowing they had found what truly mattered in life, the certainty that true love is unbreakable and that each new day was an opportunity to spread that joy to the world. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave a sincere comment below. Do you believe William deserved this second chance? We look forward to reading your thoughts. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.